Hi, my name is Sage, and this week, y'all voted and wanted me to do some more crafting with clay, so that's what I'm gonna do. So I started to brainstorm, and I knew that I wanted to have some mushrooms somehow in this piece, but I also wanted to create a little monster to go with it. I was beginning to doodle to get the energy flowing, and then I eventually landed on this guy. And you may be like, dude, that doodle doesn't really look like the thumbnail, like, at all. And this is where I tell you, everything that could have went wrong, and it was all because I was indecisive. So we're gonna go on this art journey together. And to start on our quest, I use a little wooden base and some tinfoil. And you're probably thinking nothing could go wrong here, right? I'm just wrapping the tinfoil over the wooden base. And you would be wrong, this was a terrible idea, and you'll see why later. But right now, I'm gonna scrunch up some tinfoil and kind of make it look like a two-tiered snowman as I am making the mushroom guy. And since he's looking a little small, I then wrap him in more and more tinfoil until finally he looks like this. And notice here how he isn't balanced? This is called foreshadowing for the future. And just like all my other problems, I decide to ignore it and move on. So now that I scrunched up another piece of tinfoil, this piece will be the beginning of the mushroom. And so I begin to wrap tinfoil around the little ball that I just scrunched up and make it into a disc shape. And suddenly it's starting to look more like a mushroom. However, to attach these two pieces, I can't use glue because this will be going into the oven. So I take another piece of tinfoil and wrap it all around everything before then smushing it so it takes on more of a form of a mushroom. But now you can see it's a little lopsided on one side, so I'm gonna fix that real quick by adding some more tinfoil, and bam, it's looking better. Not 100% circular, but I like it, and that's all that really matters if you're the artist. And remember when I said foreshadowing? It's still not standing up right, but in my mind, it's all okay because I'm gonna give him some little feats right now by taking some tin foil and putting it underneath him and then scrunching up the sides to make some feats before then adding more and more so he is just more and more stable. At least that is what I tell myself. So now that he's looking like this, I then make him some little arms by scrunching up some tin foil and making it into like a little log shape. And I do that twice. So now that the arm skeletons are done, I then cover him with clay. Ooh, and this is what he looks like. And now I can start to make him cute because everything has clay on him. I start by adding his face, and to do that I smush some clay on his head, and then I use my ball stylus as well as my hands to just kind of carve it out so it's a nice ovally shape before then taking my ball stylus again and poking in his eyes. The next step is obviously to take the pointy stylus and carve out his little mouth, and I have some issues with that, as you can tell. I wanted to do the spiky mouth, but it wasn't spiking right, so I just made his mouth nice and round with like some upside down hills instead of spikes for his mouth. And I went back and forth making them longer and shorter because I couldn't decide, because why would I be able to do that? Next, I move on to making his tummy scales. I think that's what they're called. I don't really know. Just picture like scales, but not in like the snake sense on their back, but on their tummies. That's what I'm making right now. And obviously, gotta use my pointy stylus a couple times to make everything all nice and perfect, even though I'm gonna do this again later. But now I get to move on to covering the arms with clay. Ooh, but one of them's a little shorter than the other one, so then I take some more clay and fix that real quick. So now that they're looking like cousins instead of long-lost relatives, I then begin my first attempt of attaching them. And notice I say attempt, because I do this a lot. And during my first run, I decide to make some hands, but make them super simple by just making some ovals and then attaching them at the ends of the arms, and bam, hands. And you may be like, oh my goodness, things seem to be going pretty good, right? Wrong. This is where I notice that my tinfoil covered base is not even, and he's wobbling around, and uh-oh, he falls over. And you may be like, dude, that was like a really gentle fall. And that's because the back of his head is all messed up, so I wanted to like let him fall gently, but also still not have to like refix everything. And so we embark on the journey of me being in denial that it's his head weight that is in fact the problem. I decide, you know what, he's probably wobbly and falling over because the underneath of him isn't completely flat. That gotta be the problem, right? Surely it's not that big dome on his head. But even after flattening everything out, it is his dome. So I scrunch up some tinfoil and now his feet are now his legs. So I attach the tinfoil to the ends of his feet before then covering it with clay. So now he got new feet, but I get distracted and take off one of his arms while in the process of giving him new feet. And if you remember the thumbnail, you know these feet do not stay. They don't even do the job correctly. He's still unbalanced. So now I'm thinking, you know what these feet really need to help put some weight on them? Some claws, as if that's going to do anything, and I knew that, but I thought, you know, what if? And since shockingly it did not work, I then think, you know what, I can give him a tail. So I take some wire, cover it with tin foil, and everything's looking great, right? Wrong. I then decide, you know what, I don't actually want to give him a tail right now. I'm gonna put this aside and work on his feet some more by giving him some pads, because obviously that is the issue. The pads will just add enough weight so that he'll be balanced. And guess what? It didn't work. So now I'm adding clay onto his legs and his upper feet just to see if I could just add enough and everything will be okay. And as you can see, it's starting to work. He's being able to sit upright, but guess what? I hate his feet. I think they're ugly, so I get rid of them. And you may be like, Sage, why would you get rid of the feet? They just weren't the vibe. But this isn't the first time I get rid of them. Just wait. So the next logical step is obviously to rip off his other arm. Before then fixing his old feet to be more smoother because his new feet ruined them. But now he's really back to being unbalanced. I'm thinking I'm gonna take my scissors and cut a little bit of the mushroom top off and see if that helps. As if that tiny amount's gonna help. So then I begin to think, what if I'm being too harsh? What if these feet actually aren't ugly? So I put them back on. And by them, I mean I just blend one on and keep the other one like just sitting there because I'm not fully invested in this yet. And this is where I noticed that his dome's kind of more in the back compared to where his head is, but I was gonna add horns anyway, so it made sense to put it more in the back. So now I'm gonna make some horns and hopefully they balance everything out instead. And I'm not putting any tin foil, no nothing in the middle of these clay horns, just strictly clay because I want them to be super weighted. And in my mind, clay weighs more than tin foil and wire. And this is obviously a foolproof plan until it isn't, and I hate the feet yet again. And my guy is not balancing at all. So now it's time to go back to the tail idea. And so I take the tin foil, cover it with clay, and wha-bam, tail. But now I'm thinking it's too thick. I have to fix that. But now it's too long, so I have to fix that now too. Until finally, I get it right. Now it's the right length and he's balanced. This is great news. Oh my god, I was so happy at this point. And now that I don't think he's ugly and he's balanced, I can then attach the tail by just doing some blending and adding a little bit more clay here and there. Before then going in and redoing some parts of his stomach while also adding a little bit more clay so everything is just more smooth. And I continue on this journey for a while. So wha-bam, transition, and now this is what he looks like. I also did a little bit of detailing on his face as well during this. But now I gotta flip him upside down and do the ridges underneath the mushroom, so I take my ball stylus and just go ham. I just do vertical lines up and down, and those are the mushroom ridges. Next, I carve out a little nose hole before then jumping over to his horns, because obviously he was just on his horns a minute ago. Here, I'm adding in some more ridges to the horns while also carving around them to make them look like they are poking through the mushroom dome. And here, I am adding back his arms, yay, except this time I'm going to make them look like they're both holding up his mushroom dome because why not? I think that's cute. And now he is finally done and I can pop him into the oven. And with the power of transition, whoop bam, it is the next day and I can start painting him. And I start by doing the first coat of black paint. I go over his feet, arms, tail, and back, all with the black paint before also filling in his eyes. And this should have been foreshadowing for me that things were gonna go wrong real quick. So I painted outside of his eye, I filled in his nose, and now I'm painting the horns and face red. And you're probably thinking to yourself, Sage, I think you got some black paint in your red paint, and you'd be right. And also, he doesn't stay red at all. I paint over this later. As you probably know by looking at the thumbnail that this is completely wrong. But then again, I ignore all my problems and skip over to painting the top of the mushroom, and I use a pale yellow. And I obviously did not wait for anything to dry because I am dragging the red paint everywhere. But then I get some sepia colored paint and I'm just going ham over the edges because I wanted to create some contrast. So regardless of the red being there, it would have been painted over anyway. At least that's what I told myself. Next, I paint his tummy ridges with some black because obviously I needed high contrast there for whatever reason. Then this was where I was really looking at him and realizing I think he's really ugly, and it's not because of all the mistakes, it's because of the red. The red's annoying me. So then I go over it with some white, but as you can tell, the white is mixing with the red, and it's because I didn't wait for it to dry, but I just continue to put more and more white on. And between takes, I am using the hairdryer, haphazardly, but I am still using it. But that wasn't enough, because off screen I was noticing some bubbling and I started picking at absolutely everything, and now he looks like a disaster. So now the only way to fix it is to go outside and start sanding. And you may be like, that's not bad, you know, just sanding away. There's thunderstorm clouds right out there. Oh no, it's me versus time. Luckily they passed, but still I was stressed. But now he's looking semi back to normal. And I can continue on my journey of painting. So I go in with a very thin layer of white paint on his face, hands, and stomach, before then flipping him over and waiting for that layer of paint to dry and start a new layer of umber brown underneath the mushroom. And since I already had the umber brown paint out, I then start to paint the wooden base umber brown as well, before then skipping back to the mushroom guy and doing the second layer of white paint over his stomach, hands, and face. Next, I paint his eyes and nose black yet again. Then, here I am painting his stomach ridges with the same yellow I used for his mushroom top. So now, the mushroom part is super emphasized. Next, I add some moss onto the base and I hot glue it all on with my hot glue gun that I got from the dollar store. Not sponsored. And last but not least, I just do some random touch-ups all around the little mushroom guy. And that's the craft. I would like to say thank you so much for following me on this chaotic journey. And now it's time for the glamour shots.